Latif, thank you so much for inviting me here. My name is Ramli John, Managing Director of Product-Led. We help sales-led organizations apply product-led growth principles into their business so that they can accelerate their growth. So that I've just been helping out a lot of companies, a lot of different product teams applying product-led growth in their organization and product sense as well.
That's really cool. And how did you get into product management that put you down this particular pathway?
My journey's actually started in marketing. as a person leading marketing for a VC-backed company before, I was trying to get, my role was to get signups, free signups. And before then, it wasn't called product-led growth. It was just randomly get us more signups. And I was like, okay, I'm getting signups. I'm hitting the signup goals that they have for it. And I started asking them, 1 second, are the people who are signing up for our product actually using it? Are they experiencing the value? Are they sticking around? And I asked if I can get access to their backend and a little bit of SQL. And I was like, 1 second. These people signing up, a lot of them are getting stuck somewhere. And that's really caught me into the deep end with product growth and understanding how can we use our product to really drive growth for our business and really driving them to that experience of the value. And after that, I got connected with Wes Bush, who wrote the book on product-led growth. And now I've been just helping different teams really like, you need, if your product is not optimized for growth, man, your marketing effort is not, you're just wasting resources there. You need to think about how to drive growth across the whole journey and not just trying to get more signups.
I couldn't agree with you more. And over those years of being part of a lot of the PLG movement, I want to blend that into the topic for today, which is product sense. So talk a little bit about how you defined product sense, and in your experience working with a lot of companies that may be sales-led or otherwise, what are you looking for when trying to suss out whether a PM has product sense?
In terms of product sense, that sense, people think, well, it's like the Sixth Sense, that movie where I can see dead people. It really isn't there. It's something that is a skill built upon one thing. It's built upon empathy. And I know product managers are like, man, Ramli, we've heard this before. Empathy, but really deep down, what is empathy? And I look at it as somebody who understands their customer holistically, meaning they understand what they're trying to do. That's the first piece. It's the functional piece. The second is the emotional. Customers are emotional beings. So do they understand what those customers are feeling when they first use your product or avoid feeling? Like, that's such a weird question to have, right? But think about the first time I've used Calendly to book a meeting. Very first time, 6 years ago, there's a feeling of excitement. There's a feeling of joy. There's a feeling of, goodness, I didn't have to go back and forth by email anymore. There's that emotional piece to every product, which is a big part of emotion. And the third piece of us as human beings is we're social creatures. We care about what our boss, our colleagues, our friends and family think about us, even in a B2B sense. An example I can think of is when, going back to Calendly, it is a social already integrated to it. When you send a Calendly link to a guest, they're like, what are they going to think about me? Am I going to look stupid if this fails? Another example with a lot of reporting tools is like, when you create a beautiful report, you want to look professional to your boss so that they eventually give you a promotion, right? So like even B2B products, I would argue, have an emotional and a social piece to it because no human is an island. And whenever we use products, it often requires us to interact with other people. So I think product sense is built upon that empathy where you fully understand the functional, the emotional, and the social piece to the customers who are using your product.
I really like that. And one of the words that I try to often use that may sometimes be a little bit more broad is perspective. Because sometimes empathy, does have a certain ring to it these days.
Perspective.
And it then enables someone to kind of digest information from multiple customers and then say, I don't have to just empathize with that one point of view. I can see the whole broader picture. And so I completely love that point of view. One of the things that always comes to mind from talking to people at some of the big tech companies in the Valley is that there are organizations, like Facebook, that are very data-driven. And we know not data-informed, not data-curious, but like data-driven. Like making a decision in the product requires, or an experiment requires, being able to justify it almost purely on the basis of data, and gaming companies too. Those PMs in there, product sense is not something that is nourished. How do you view that? I mean, those products are incredibly successful, right? And so where does product sense become valuable? Because it doesn't, there could be an argument that it's not necessary in all companies. What's your take on that?
I mean, maybe those ones are outliers, like where they're just purely data and they don't have that sense of like that. I love what you call it, perspective, a holistic perspective of what their thing, the customer is. I see it as both sides of the coin. Like when you're data driven, right? You're looking at just purely numbers and what is the conversion from inactive to active to power user. Like that's one piece of the picture. But to really have a bigger sense of how your customers are doing, you really need to be plugged into that product sense. You really need to understand those customers. And there are studies showed by CoSchedule and ProfitWell that the ones that continually talk to their customers and ingrain product sense, their perspective of the customer, the voice of the customer, whatever you want to call it, they can grow 2 to 3 times faster than ones that don't. I mean, sure, there can be outliers like Facebook, but when you understand, like, the other thing that really boggles my mind is like, sure, okay, we already talked to our customers, we have product market fit. The concept with product market fit is you can lose product market fit once you've gained it because the market can be moving. And in that sense, now, if you're not talking to your customer, if you're not getting that product sense, the market moves, you can get your lunch eaten. An example I can think of is Airbnb. Airbnb, they had product market fit. Then guess what? Something happened that what happens once in 100 years, called a pandemic, and they're like, dang, the market has shifted. We need to shift with the market or else we're not going to survive as Airbnb with all the things that is happening. They really had to shift the way that they deliver and communicate the message. And in that sense, this is the do or die thing because there's another book that said that it's the fast that wins. It's not the big. You really need to have a sense of that product sense throughout your organization because you might be left behind if the market moves without you.
I mean, that's a really great point. And with so many different SaaS applications coming up, and I think the statistic was, like 5 to 7 years ago, the average SaaS company had 3 competitors. Now it has 9. And I know everyone likes to tout, hey, you know what? Let's ignore what your competitor is doing and watch what your customers are doing. That only goes so far. I think, when we talk about these markets changing and people are trying to find a way to get their intuitions more honed, how do you recommend, you talked about empathy and we talked about perspective, like what are the types of projects or the types of experiences you've seen really hone that product sense so that they can be equipped to work on handling the black swans of a pandemic as an example?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of examples where, like, the question is, how do we ingrain our customer stories? How do we ingrain that perspective in our organization? And that needs to really start from the top, the leadership of the product team, even further, the top, very, very top. And I can think of an example. I had a chat with Yulia. She leads the growth at Miro. Miro is this collaboration tool. And I kid you not, they said that in some quarterly meetings, they would actually fly some of their customers into their quarterly meeting to tell stories of how they're using the product. And that does a few things. The first is it gets people excited and pumped up that you're not building a product. We're not here to build better products. We're here to upgrade people. We're here to help people be better than they were before they touch our product. And really, like, there's this other quote that I love from Kathy Sierra. She wrote this book called Making Products Awesome. She said that don't upgrade your camera, upgrade your photographers. You really, like, that's the reason why we're building the products, is we're upgrading users. And I think that's one example, is how do you systematize that process, that whole empathy and perspective to your organization. One would be like, hey, let's add more stories in our meetings. Like, share those stories. How do we share those stories across org? So it's not just the product team or the user research team that is like really ingrained in that, because that builds not just product sense in the product team, but it builds that sense throughout the whole organization, so that they are truly aware of what does my customer feel? What does my customer think? What is their social setting that's getting them excited about this? And how are we upgrading users? And that's where I would start. It's like starting by sharing stories, because stories are great. We love stories. It's the earliest form of entertainment, right? Before movies, before Netflix, before Spotify, all of that, the way that we entertain ourselves is people telling stories. And that's very rooted in us, that stories really do connect us with that going back to that data piece, really tells the holistic picture of how we're doing as a company.
I love that. And one of the things, and if I think back to the times that we've had customers come and present to the company, those have been the most impactful moments. I think people hang on the words and quote those customers, because we're not necessarily all customer success or salespeople interacting every day, but the whole organization hears that together in unity, right? That unity of conversation. And I remember we had a really famous bank in Canada, and then customer, they came in and they said something that I had never expected, which was our culture of product management was really closed and we didn't share, but we were using a tool that changed our culture to be more open and transparent. And I had never heard it from that cultural perspective. And everyone then really, truly emotionally connected with that customer and got that perspective. And a lot of people who may work behind the scenes in the business, I think, were hit by that. And it was a real motivator, and is a real motivator continuously. So I think that's such a great point, is when are people bringing those customer stories, not just written form in Slack or shared on an email. Those are great, but bring them to present to those quarterly meetings. I think that's so powerful to start and open with that, and to challenge people to think in those terms when setting up their next offsites.
For sure. And I'm curious, like you said, it created an impact. I'm guessing it excited everybody, because like sometimes product folks get caught up with the data and the design and pushing people to do stuff, and they don't realize that they don't see the impact. And this, I'm guessing when this happened for your team, they were like, this is amazing. Like, I just got everybody excited around your product even more. Is that what you found?
Oh, absolutely. They were politely interrogated for the next hour with questions about how they use certain features, what they wish they could see in the product,
Interesting.
what's blocking them from the rest of the organization using it. Just all the questions you want to hear asked, but being asked by people that you wouldn't necessarily expect it to ask. And I think that's a really powerful thing because of that engagement with the organization. And you can just see those social connection points to further create a relationship between the customer, the user, as well as the people building the product, which really there couldn't, and can't think of anything that could be more powerful than that.
That's true.
And that's what leads to, in a sense, product sense, is hearing that and understanding that. And so, when you work with organizations that are building new products versus improving current existing products, there's different sets of problems. How do you think about the type of product manager and what product sense they necessarily would need in each of those two buckets?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge with a totally new product is, first of all, understanding who is going to, where's the product sense rooted in. So I guess the first question, if it's a totally new product, is trying to understand, first of all, who, and trying to understand the stuff that I talked about, the feelings, the functional, the emotional, and the social piece to that. And really, like, that's a totally different kind of skill, and might require working with product marketing, who, as they identify that piece and the positioning and the messaging, that's the new product. In the sense that you're trying to grow an existing product already or releasing new features, you already have that customer base. And I would just try to find the best customers, those ones that bought it already, like without having to, can I talk to sales? Can I do this? They got it, they bought it, they love it, and they just went through it. They're the ones that stuck with you through thick or thin, no matter if there's another prettier product or a sexier product that comes along. They're committed to you through thick or thin, essentially. Those customers are ones that you truly want to understand, because you want to find exactly more people like that and what kind of things they care about. You want to be looking at, what other use cases are they looking for, or are there other blockage or friction points in the product that you can make it easier for them. Once again, going back to what I said earlier, like, how can we make this person's life even better than it already is, would be the mindset of somebody who is trying to release new features or trying to grow a product, versus going back to the other side. I'm just trying to find out who I need to, who I'm trying to, which life am I going to try to change? So you're trying to find that market first before you even release the product at all.
I really like that. Is there an example where you've watched or coached a set of PMs and they were leaning heavily into a direction or a piece of information or feedback or insight that put them in a certain path, but your product sense wasn't in line with that? And how did you handle that situation? How did you question those PMs to think about the situation differently?
We work with this company called Snappa, and they help people create designs easily, very much like what Canva does, where you can design logos or things like that. And one thing that the product team was really stuck on was, like, we need to have the email verification, the two-step email verification. That's where, like, when you sign up, please, Ramli, please, Latif, go to your inbox right now and click on verify. That kind of thing. And I've gone through about 80% of different onboarding in the last month, and 80% of them have that. I'm not entirely sure why. And we're like, man, you really got to understand the data showing 30 to 50% of people getting there are not continuing on, and they still weren't fully bought in. So we did some usability testing where we walked through some users, and now the users themselves are saying, God, goodness, man, why do we have to this? Like, why do we have to verify our email with this? Like, when you're presented not just with, hey, here, this is where they're getting stuck, and you're presented with actual potential users or customers saying, this is annoying. That's when we finally got them to agree to removing that. And once they did, we saw an immediate increase in terms of their people activating and completing that first value point or first experience for that product, just because that they saw that the data, both quantitative and qualitative, really do back it up. So going back to your question, if people are stuck in that situation where, like, the direction is going somewhere, if you can get, like, data or some kind of qualitative ones, or you can get some kind of usability testing just to show what people are saying, going back to the stories, if you can hear the words directly from users, then they're probably more likely to go with what's easier for the users, if they really want to make it easier for the users.
That's a really great example. And I think when you have, those are some incredible numbers. 30 to 50% don't start the actual use of your application. Just imagine.
Yeah.
Just imagine. It's like pedaling a bike with one pedal. Like, you're doing all this work and you're not getting anywhere because nobody's actually getting into your application, which would be really tough. I think that's a fantastic example. Continuing on the thread of just kind of thinking about certain types of categories of products and, onboarding. When you look at, like, B2B and B2C, do you see where product sense might be maybe in sort of the opposite way, potentially harmful, where companies may have a really good instinct. You've got a really tenured product manager who's kind of seen it and done it before, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, you know what? Maybe we need to hold the gears back on just trusting instinct. Where does it maybe not work to have product sense in a situation like this?
Yeah, in terms of when product sense doesn't work, and it goes back to the market shifting, right? Like that's why I would be very wary when instinct is just fully instinct, and I would marry that with quantitative data as much as possible. I mean, not in every case can you have like, oh, let's gather data and let's clean it and let's take a look at it, just because time is money, right? Like the speed, the game of startups and scale ups and even some enterprise companies is speed. And in that sense, like, okay, you might be leaning hard on instinct, but don't base it on one person's instinct or like that guy's the guru, like he is, or he or she, that person is the end all be all because that instinct is like is the rule, right? If you can have several folks kind of have that sense, then, and there's consensus around that, then that would be a better situation where somebody can if somebody's sense is against somebody else's product sense, then there might be a good discussion to actually, hey, well, 1 second, we might be stepping on over the cliff at this point, and we should really take a look down if there's still a path, we're still on the path versus like we're actually about to fall off the cliff here in a second. So I mean, that's what I would suggest in that situation, would be like, if you can, go get data. If you can't, go find other people who are aware of that situation, and kind of, if everybody's in consensus, then that's a higher signal that it's in the right direction. And if it's not, then maybe there's a time you should take pause and really think through and take a look at the data itself.
With a lot of the mentoring and teaching work you're doing, especially with product management, what are you seeing in the next generation of product management? What are your observations? And for the people listening, what are those things for people trying to break into product? What are your first sort of foundational things you're coaching them on?
Yeah, I mean, this is just me coaching myself. I'm a natural introvert, so my natural instinct is just data, and I'm finding that I'm coaching myself to just talk to customers. I mean, the closer you are to going back to that empathy and that perspective and the product sense, the closer you are to the customer, the greater product that you can build, essentially, because you're not building product for what you think is a good product. You're building a product to serve people and make their lives better, going back to that. So, I mean, that's one thing that I'm continually coaching myself. And also that's one thing that I'm seeing even product folks. It's really fascinating. There's a stat from CoSchedule that says that 65% of the people, that product teams that they talk to, don't actually talk to their customers. They don't actually talk. I mean, I'm seeing your face. Like, if people are seeing your face, they're like, what? Like, this is what is the reality, is people are pressed for time, and they think that talking to customers is too much effort. And really, I'm surprised myself whenever I talk to product teams and work through how to be product led, is a lot of them actually don't talk to the customers. They don't bring in that stories. It's only the sales team or customer success team that does it. And a lot of the information they get is from secondhand information that they might have heard from the founders or the sales team. So, I mean, that's going back to what we've been talking about this whole time. It's like, please build that habit into your team, because then it would really make your job, make the product, make everything better than it is right now.
That's brilliant. And I think that's such a great point to nail in. So Ramli, you have, for people that can't see it right now, you've got a PLG hat on. And you talked a little bit about how you're helping companies that are sales focused become product focused. And I think intrinsically as product managers, we gravitate towards that. But, talk a little bit about how that idea came to be, And what are the fundamentals that companies today that are really trying to break into PLG need to understand before going down that road?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for a lot of sales-led org, they sell through the traditional way, right? They have to request a demo, and then you have to close it, and then you show the experience, the product itself. What I'm finding is that for larger organizations that is going from sales-led to product-led, a big piece to it that we often don't talk about, that I haven't heard until much recently when we're starting to help more larger organizations, is that there's this whole change management piece that a lot of product leaders need to have. And that often means having diplomatic skills, and really sharing how can the product help the sales team. And then now you can explain about, how do you know a lead is good? And they talk about, if they download an ebook, what if I told you that you can get leads that have already used our product, so you don't have to explain what the product is, and they've already kind of used it a few times. Like, would that be valuable to you, salespeople? And most of the time, they're like, hell yeah, give those to me, and they're gonna find like, oh my goodness, those quote unquote product qualified leads, the ones that have used the product already, are their sales cycles shorter. Like, we've had this company that I had a chat with recently, and their sales cycle is usually 6 months. And there's this one moment they open up the product, somebody signed up, they tried it out, they set up stuff over the weekend. Monday they had a call with the sales team, $10,000 a month from in 6 months to 3 days. They were like, what just happened? And the sales team were like, we need to get on board with this. So, I mean, that's one example. I'm really picking on the sales team because often when we talk about product-led, the sales team is the one that freaks out the most. They're like, we're going to get fired. And really, like, the way that you get buy-in from an organization is just start explaining how product can actually fuel marketing, how it can fuel customer success, how it can fuel sales, and how it can really fuel growth for the whole organization.
So in that example, it sounds like, you showed them how you can take the transaction speed from 6 months to 3 days. I mean, what a great testimonial. But I do think when you do something like that, there is a concern that, you may not need a dozen sales reps. Maybe you need half of that. How do you manage that, from your side of the business? And maybe you have some founders that agree with you and some founders that are sales driven that don't. Like, I suspect you've probably been in a situation like that, and you can show them the power of it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there's optimization that just happened, and the sales rep is now just collecting a piece of paper and within that 72-hour period.
Sure. I say this all the time. I actually don't think product-led growth pure by itself is the best. And why I'm saying this is often the best organizations are ones that are hybrid. For example, look at Slack. Like, often we think, they're just pure product-led, but in the last 2009 stock filing they have, 60% of their sales come from salespeople. So sales is super important in a product-led organizations. That example that I gave you, there are people who sign up that they don't want to talk to sales. They just want to sign up. There are some who want to try it first and they actually want to talk to sales after. But there are other people, they're just way too busy and they just want to talk to sales from the beginning. And what this is offering, this hybrid approach to the organization, is that, hey, sales, we're not taking away your toy. We're not taking away power from you. We're giving you options, right? Sure, you can have the whole motion with enterprise that they really need somebody to explain to them because they're too busy. But you're adding up layers to it where there are other customers that just want to try it out and before they actually talk to customers. So to your question, I would start off small and I wouldn't transition the whole sales team. Maybe just for that example I did, only one person was in charge of the self-serve motion or the product-led sales motion. Then once he's overwhelmed or that person was overwhelmed, they added the second one while the other sales team was continuing on what they're doing. And they added a third so that now it's not about competition. They have both enterprise outbound revenue goals as well as self-serve revenue goals, and you're just covering the whole base from small, medium to enterprise customers that have different needs and desires as to how they're buying how they want to buy the product. So that's how I would communicate it, and I would approach it. It's not to transition everybody to product led. Just start off small, baby steps. It's really just take baby steps towards an optimized path.
I love that. I think you know, one of the things this ties into is the recent book you wrote on onboarding. Would love to hear about what inspired that book through your time working with so many companies, and what were the insights you gleaned that the audience, you know, can take away?
For sure. I mean, that what inspired that, going back to my story with like, as marketer, I was like, let's just do signups. And really, that's like throwing a party. The way that I explain it is you throw a party, the marketing team has like, they shelled out cash for the ads. They pass it around the college campus. They come to the party and people are they're not friendly. And the party host doesn't even welcome the guests to the party. They don't show where the toilet is. They don't show where the drinks is. They don't show where the fun is happening. They don't try to understand, hey, do you want to sing karaoke in this party? Or maybe just have a chit chat by the fire? Or we have a bouncy castle. Maybe you want to jump on the bouncy castle. When that happens, where people come to the party and they feel snubbed, it's not a great experience. The chance of them coming back is not going to be high, and the chance of them referring people to come to that party is not going to be great. But on the other hand, when you create a great experience and people really like see the value and they're connected to the fun, then that's where the interesting stuff happens, where people are vibing and they're not going to come back. They're going to invite their friends to it, and really that's where the really interesting stuff can happen, because now you can, going back to what we just talked about, the ones that are having fun are more likely to talk to somebody called an account executive or a customer success manager, because they're having fun, they're excited, and they're more likely to increase their customer lifetime value and stick around and continue to buying from you over and over again. So I mean, that's what got me excited. It's onboarding really sets people up for success, or it sets them up to fail within your product. And it's really the first impression. It's like that first interview. Onboarding is like an interview for your product. And if you fail that interview, you're not going to get a job, or you're going to be fired very soon.
Wow. I think that's an articulate way to say it. I love the part about the fun, because a lot of people want to go into a new application these days, and the bar is just so high, especially through gamification and applications that have, you know, made the experience really unique and interesting. And there's so many experiments that have been run. You know, is there a recent example in which, you know, a company you've worked with had its onboarding in a place that wasn't as desirable? And, you know, what were the one or two changes, maybe through some product sense that you had or experience, that just, you know, changed their user's journey?
For sure. I mean, it goes back to that example with Snappa. I mean, that's the one that we love getting an example of, because they really shared with us after what happened when we removed that two-step email verification. It's like, hey, let's just remove this. 30 to 50% of your users they're not clicking on that email because it's in spam, or they got busy, or they got distracted by their phone or Netflix or YouTube, whatever the distraction. We removed that, and like within 6 months, they had a 20% growth in their monthly recurring revenue just because of that one change. And you're like, Ramli, that's absurd. Sure, I mean, that might be an extreme, but the point is, what we suggest for people is look at every single button click and feel that a user has to go through to experience the value of your product for the first time. Whatever that is. What is that success? Whatever that is. And look at which ones are ones that can be delayed after they've achieved the value, ones that you can remove, or ones that is absolutely mission critical for them to know and to click on, to fill out, so that they can experience that value. And when you do, you're going to slowly realize, oh my goodness, I have so many steps. One client we had, it was 83 steps for a new user to experience the first value of that product. And when it's 83 steps, I bet you there's one extra step that somebody's going to drop off in that journey. And that's one extra step that people are going to be like, I'm tired. I just want to get out of this. So, I mean, that's one thing that I would suggest for people is just audit your onboarding and see every single field. Is this absolutely necessary? Are we using this for something? Or is this something that we just added on so that we can make the sales team happy or the customer success team happy? Or is this button click? Is this product tour actually absolutely necessary? Do I really need to point that button out or that other button click in this product tour? If not, then we should just remove it from here and just get people to experience your product or fun as quickly as possible.
That's awesome. For this last chapter of the podcast here, I want to get to know a little bit about Ramli outside of work here. You're an author, and we want to know, what books are you reading as of late?
Yeah. Oh, man. One thing I'm still reading is this book by Seth Godin called The Practice. And it's about, I mean, going back to that sense, I swear I did not align this. It's about honing your creativity and building a skill and practice around how do you continue to have a practice of not just listening, but also actually creating. And it's been really great because the chapters are very short and I have sometimes low attention span. And the chapters are so good that it's been 6 months. I'm still reading it because every time I read a chapter, I'm like, I need to think about it. Like, how am I going to apply this to what I'm doing right now? Like, for example, a recent insight that I've gotten is around feedback. Like, a lot of feedback you get on the internet, Seth Godin said, is useless. The reason why is those people might not be your people for your art or your product or your creativity, and you really want to be listening to the right ones. It's the reason why Seth Godin doesn't look at his reviews on Amazon, just because those 1-star reviews might be people that are not the people that he actually serves. So, I mean, that's one book that I've been reading is The Practice by Seth Godin.
But I'm sure he just reads the 5-star reviews. Right? Those are the people that are part of his tribe.
For sure. I'm sure he does read the 5-star.
And where can listeners find and connect with you, Ramli?
Sure. If people have questions about product or product-led growth or onboarding, people can send me an email. My email is ramli@productled.com. I'm on Twitter as well, Ramli John, and LinkedIn, the same. There's no other Ramli John there. So as people are interested in checking out the product-led onboarding book, they can go to onboardingbook.com and they can get the first chapter for free, and they can check out if they like it. And if you're ready, go check it out on Amazon as well.
Ramli, thank you so much for joining me on Product to Product today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Latif.
We'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks, everyone.